The whip cracked across Penelope's back the moment her master discovered the worn primer hidden beneath her thin mattress, and she understood in that burning instant that knowledge could hurt worse than ignorance ever had. It was 1876 in Tucson, Arizona, where the desert stretched endlessly in all directions, and the rules for hired help were carved in stone as unyielding as the mountains on the horizon. Penelope Owens had been working at the Henderson Ranch for 3 years, brought on as an indentured servant when her father's debts consumed everything her family owned back in Missouri. She was 20 years old now, her hands calloused from washing clothes and scrubbing floors, her spirit nearly broken but not quite extinguished. The book had belonged to Mrs. Henderson's youngest son before he went east to university. Penelope had found it in a pile of items destined for burning, rescued it in a moment of reckless hope, and spent her nights by candlelight tracing the letters with trembling fingers. She had taught herself the alphabet from signs around town during her rare trips to fetch supplies, memorizing each shape and sound with desperate hunger. Reading felt like breathing air for the first time after being underwater her entire life. But Mr. Henderson did not see it that way. He saw a servant growing ideas above her station, a woman who might start thinking she deserved more than the corner room and table scraps he provided. The punishment came swift and severe. 10 lashes with a leather strap, the book burned to ash in the yard while she watched through tears, and 3 days locked in the storage cellar with only bread and water. When they finally released her, weak and feverish, Mrs. Henderson looked away as Penelope stumbled to her room. "You are lucky my husband is not pressing charges for theft," the older woman said coldly. "That book was property of this household." Penelope said nothing. Words seemed pointless now, dangerous even. She returned to her duties with her back screaming pain beneath her threadbare dress, each movement a reminder of what curiosity cost in this unforgiving place. 2 weeks later, Penelope was beating rugs behind the main house when a rider approached from the direction of town. She glanced up briefly, then kept her eyes down as she had learned to do. The horseman was tall in the saddle, his hat pulled low against the afternoon sun. He dismounted near the front porch with easy grace, calling out a greeting that Mr. Henderson answered from somewhere inside. "Nathan Lawson, good to see you," Henderson's voice boomed. "What brings you out this way?" "Looking to hire some extra hands for a cattle drive next month," the stranger replied. His voice was deeper than Henderson's, with a hint of something thoughtful beneath the western drawl. "Heard you might have recommendations." Penelope continued her work, though she could not help stealing glances at the visitor as the 2 men talked business on the porch. Nathan Lawson was probably in his mid-20s, with sun-darkened skin and the lean build of someone who spent his life in the saddle. He owned a spread about 15 miles north, or so she gathered from the conversation drifting across the yard. He ran cattle and horses, did some work breaking mustangs, and apparently had a reputation for fair dealing. "I will send a couple of my boys your way," Henderson was saying. "They are good workers, no trouble." Nathan nodded, then his gaze swept across the property and landed on Penelope. She quickly looked down, heart hammering for no reason she could name. Strange men were always potential danger for a woman in her position, and she had learned to make herself invisible whenever possible. "That girl there," Nathan said quietly. "Is she all right? She is moving like something hurts." Penelope froze, the rug beater going still in her hands. Henderson's voice turned cold. "That is no concern of yours, Lawson. She is hired help who overstepped her bounds. Discipline was necessary." "What did she do?" "Stole from my household. Showed defiance. I dealt with it appropriately under the law." There was a pause, and Penelope could feel Nathan's eyes on her back, right where the wound still ached beneath her dress. Her face burned with shame. "I see," Nathan said finally, his tone carefully neutral. "Well, I appreciate the help with the hands. I will be heading back to town now." "Good day, Henderson." "Good day." Penelope heard the sounds of Nathan mounting his horse, the creak of leather and jingle of tack. She expected him to ride away immediately, but instead there was a long moment of silence. When she dared to glance up, she found him looking directly at her, his expression unreadable beneath the shadow of his hat. Then he turned his horse and rode slowly down the drive toward the main road. That should have been the end of it. Penelope told herself to forget the concern in a stranger's voice, the way he had questioned her treatment when no one else ever bothered. She returned to her endless cycle of chores, sunrise to sunset. Her world shrunk to the boundaries of the Henderson property. But 3 days later, Nathan Lawson returned. This time he brought business that required Henderson to ride out with him to look at some disputed fence line on neighboring property. They would be gone most of the day, Henderson announced to his wife, and the hands were to continue work on the new barn roof. Penelope was scrubbing the kitchen floor when she heard them leave, hoofbeats fading into the distance. She did not hear Nathan return an hour later, did not know he was there, until his boots appeared in her line of vision on the clean part of the floor. She scrambled back with a gasp, sloshing water from her bucket. "I am sorry, I did not mean to startle you," Nathan said, raising both hands in a peaceful gesture. "I told Henderson I forgot something and would catch up with him. I wanted to talk to you." Penelope's mind raced. Mrs. Henderson was upstairs in her sitting room. The hands were all on the barn. She was alone with this stranger in the kitchen, and fear spiked through her veins. "Sir, I have work to do. Please, I cannot have trouble." "You will not have trouble from me, I promise." He crouched down so he was at her eye level instead of looming over her. Up close, she could see his face more clearly. He had kind eyes, dark brown and steady, and a scar through one eyebrow that gave him a roguish look despite the gentleness of his expression. "My name is Nathan. What is yours?" "Penelope," she whispered. "Penelope Owens. Penelope." He said it like the name mattered, like she was a real person instead of a servant. "I heard what happened to you, about the book." Her face flamed hot. "I should not have taken it. Mr. Henderson was right to punish me." "Was he?" Nathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather-bound volume. "Because I think anyone who wants to learn to read has every right to do so, regardless of their station." Penelope stared at the book in his hands as if it were a snake that might strike. "I cannot. You do not understand. If he finds out, if she sees that, I will be beaten again or worse. Then we will be careful." Nathan set the book on the floor between them, not forcing it into her hands but offering it all the same. "It is a collection of short stories, nothing fancy, but it is yours if you want it. I will bring others too if you like, books about history, poetry, whatever interests you." "Why?" The word burst from her before she could stop it. "Why would you do this for me? You do not even know me." Nathan was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "My mother was a servant before she met my father. She taught herself to read in secret, kept it hidden for years. When my father found out, instead of being angry, he married her. She used to tell me that reading saved her life, gave her hope when she had nothing else. She died when I was 12, but I never forgot what she said. Knowledge is not something that should be locked away from people who need it most." Tears burned in Penelope's eyes. She blinked them back fiercely, not wanting to cry in front of this stranger who somehow saw her as human. "I could lose everything, I know, and I will not force anything on you, but the offer stands." He straightened up, tipping his hat to her. "I will be back this way in a week. If that book is gone from where I am about to leave it, I will know you took it." If it is still there, I will know you do not want my help. Either way, no judgment." "Where?" she asked, hating the hope that crept into her voice. "The old chicken coop behind the barn, the one that is not used anymore. There is a loose board on the back wall, third from the left at ground level. I will leave it there before I ride out." He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. "For what it is worth, Penelope, anyone who wants to learn badly enough to risk what you risked is not a thief. You are brilliant for trying and brave as hell. Do not let anyone tell you different." Then he was gone, his boots echoing down the hall and out the front door. Penelope sat frozen on the wet kitchen floor, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break free from her chest. Brilliant, he had called her. Brave. Words no one had ever applied to her in her entire life. She finished the floor in a daze, her mind spinning. It was a trap, surely, or a test, or some cruel joke that would end with her being punished again. But when she carried scraps out to the hogs that evening, she detoured past the old chicken coop. Her hands shook as she counted the boards, found the third from the left and pulled gently. It came away easily, revealing a gap just large enough to reach through. The book was there, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from the elements. Penelope looked around frantically, but no one was watching. The hands were washing up for supper. The family was inside. She grabbed the package and shoved it under her apron, then hurried to her small room at the back of the house. Only when her door was closed and latched did she dare unwrap the book. The leather was soft under her fingers, worn smooth by other hands. She opened it carefully, reverently, and saw words swimming on the page. Some she could puzzle out from her limited knowledge, others remained mysterious. But it was hers, at least for now, and the weight of it in her hands felt like possibility. That night, after the household slept, Penelope lit her precious candle stub and began to read. The week passed with agonizing slowness. Penelope hid the book in a different spot each day, terrified of another search. She tucked it behind the loose brick in the fireplace of the rarely used parlor, buried it beneath the straw in the horse stall of the gentlest mare, even carried it on her person wrapped in cloth and stuffed into her undergarments when paranoia overwhelmed her. At night, she devoured the stories by candlelight, sounding out words she did not know and guessing at meanings from context. Her reading improved with stunning speed, her hungry mind soaking up every letter like the parched desert ground drinking rain. She told herself not to expect Nathan to return. He had done his good deed, salved his conscience, and would forget about the servant girl at the Henderson ranch. Rich men did not really care about people like her, no matter what kind words they spoke. But on the seventh day, he came. Penelope was hanging laundry when she spotted him riding up, this time with another man she did not recognize. They met with Henderson again, more talk of cattle and prices, business that took them inside to Henderson's study. Her heart sank. He would not have time to speak with her, might not even remember she existed. Yet as the men filed past her toward the house, Nathan's eyes found hers for just a moment. He gave the slightest nod toward the old chicken coop, so subtle she almost missed it. Her pulse jumped. That evening, when she went to close up the hens in their current coop, she checked the hiding spot. The book she had been reading was gone. She had returned it that morning just in case. In its place was a new one, larger and heavier. She pulled it out with shaking hands. It was a proper reader, the kind used in schools with lessons on grammar and vocabulary. Tucked inside the front cover was a folded piece of paper. Penelope glanced around, then quickly opened it. The handwriting was neat, educated. "You are doing wonderfully. This will help you learn faster. I am proud of you. N.L." Penelope pressed the paper to her chest, a strange warmth flooding through her. He was proud of her. A man she barely knew, who had no reason to care whether she lived or died, was proud of her for learning to read. She wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Over the following months, a pattern developed. Nathan found reasons to visit the Henderson ranch every week or two, always on legitimate business, never staying longer than propriety allowed. And always, he left something in the hiding spot. Books on mathematics, volumes of poetry, a worn copy of Shakespeare's plays. Sometimes there were notes tucked inside, brief but encouraging. "This poet reminds me of you, strong despite everything." Or, "Try reading this passage aloud, it helps with the difficult words." Or simply, "Keep going. You are brilliant." Penelope read with a voracious appetite that surprised even herself. The books opened worlds she had never imagined, introduced her to ideas and places far beyond the dusty confines of Tucson. She learned history and science, read stories of love and adventure, discovered that words could be weapons and shields and wings all at once. Her vocabulary expanded, her understanding deepened. She began to see patterns in how sentences were constructed, in how stories built meaning layer by layer. And slowly, carefully, she began to see Nathan Lawson as more than just a benefactor. It happened in tiny increments, each small interaction adding to the last. The way he looked at her when he thought no one else would notice, his eyes warm with something that made her stomach flutter. The time he visited during a dust storm and insisted on helping her secure the shutters despite Henderson's protests that it was servant's work, his hands brushing hers as they wrestled with the stubborn latches. The note he left that said simply, "I think about you often," tucked inside a volume of Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poetry. Penelope knew it was dangerous to feel anything for Nathan. The gulf between their positions was vast and unbridgeable. He owned land and cattle, commanded respect throughout the territory. She was an indentured servant who could not legally leave her employment until her father's debts were paid, which would take at least 3 more years at the rate Henderson allowed her to work them off. Any relationship between them was impossible, scandalous, potentially ruinous for them both. But her heart did not care about logic or propriety. It beat faster when she heard his voice, ached when too much time passed between visits. She found herself memorizing details about him from their brief encounters. The way he laughed at something Henderson said, low and genuine. The efficient grace of his movements as he mounted his horse. The kindness in his eyes when he glanced her way, always checking that she was all right. The turning point came in late spring, nearly 8 months after their first meeting. Penelope was carrying water from the well when her foot caught on an uneven stone. She went down hard, the bucket flying from her hands and her ankle twisting viciously beneath her. Pain lanced through her leg and she cried out before she could stop herself. Nathan was there in an instant, apparently just arriving for another visit. He dropped his horse's reins and ran to her side, kneeling in the dust. "Do not move, let me look." "I am fine," she gasped, though tears of pain streamed down her face. "I just need a moment. Your ankle is swelling already." His hands were gentle as he examined her leg, careful not to cause more pain. "I think it might be broken." Henderson came out of the house, scowling. "What is all this commotion? Girl, get up and get back to work." "Her ankle is broken," Nathan said flatly, not looking away from Penelope. "She needs a doctor. For a servant, I am not paying for a doctor over a twisted ankle. She can wrap it and work through it." Nathan stood slowly, and something in his posture made Henderson step back. "She is not working through a broken bone. I will take her to Doc Williams myself and cover the cost. Now you listen here, Lawson. That girl is my property until her contract is fulfilled. You have no right to interfere with how I manage my household. She is not property. She is a human being. Nathan's voice was quiet but edged with steel. "And if you try to stop me from getting her medical care, I will make sure every rancher in the territory knows how you treat people under your employ. See how easy it is to hire good hands after that." The two men stared at each other, tension crackling between them. Finally, Henderson waved his hand dismissively. "Fine, take her, but the cost comes out of her wages, understood?" "The cost is mine to bear," Nathan said. He turned back to Penelope and before she could protest, scooped her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all. "Hold on to me." Penelope had no choice but to wrap her arms around his neck as he carried her to his horse. The world spun from pain and shock, and the overwhelming sensation of being held with such care. He lifted her into the saddle, then swung up behind her, one arm secure around her waist to keep her steady. "This is not proper," she whispered as they started down the drive. "I do not care about proper," he replied, his breath warm against her ear. "I care that you are hurt." The ride into Tucson took 20 minutes that felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Penelope was acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched, the solid strength of his chest against her back, the way his arm held her safe. The pain in her ankle faded to background noise beneath the thundering of her heart. Doc Williams confirmed the ankle was badly sprained but not broken, wrapped it tightly, and gave her a bottle of laudanum for the pain. Nathan paid without hesitation, then helped her back onto his horse for the return journey. "Thank you," Penelope said softly as they rode. "You did not have to do all this." "Yes, I did." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "Penelope, I need to tell you something, and if it is unwelcome, I will understand and never mention it again." Her heart stuttered. "What is it?" "These past months, getting to know you through those books, seeing how hard you work to better yourself despite everything against you. I have developed feelings that go beyond friendship or mentorship. I think you are extraordinary. Brilliant and brave and beautiful, and I cannot stop thinking about you." Penelope could hardly breathe. "Nathan, I am a servant. You are a landowner. This cannot work. I know the obstacles. Believe me, I have thought of nothing else for weeks. But I also know that I have never felt this way about anyone, and I cannot imagine letting you go without at least telling you the truth." His arm tightened fractionally around her waist. "Do you feel anything for me? Anything at all?" She should lie. She should protect them both from the impossibility of this situation. But after months of reading about honesty and courage in those precious books, Penelope found she could not deny what was in her heart. "I feel everything for you," she whispered. "I think I have been falling in love with you since the day you called me brilliant." Nathan's breath caught. For a long moment neither spoke, the magnitude of the admission hanging between them. Then he said, "I am going to buy out your contract from Henderson." "What?" "No, Nathan, that is too much. My father owed nearly $1,000 and I have only worked off half at most. You cannot spend that kind of money on me." "I can and I will. I have the funds and there is nothing I would rather spend them on. You deserve freedom, Penelope. And once you are free, if you want to leave Tucson and never see me again, I will accept that. But at least you will have the choice." Tears spilled down her cheeks, hot and fast. "I would never want to leave you." "Then stay," he said simply. "Stay and let me court you properly. Let me show you what it means to be cherished. People will talk. Let them talk. I do not care what anyone thinks except you." They were approaching the Henderson ranch again, their stolen moment of privacy coming to an end. Nathan slowed his horse to a walk, clearly reluctant to let her go. "I will speak with Henderson tomorrow about the contract. And in the meantime, there is a book in the hiding spot about courtship customs in England. I thought you might find it interesting." Despite everything, Penelope laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "You are incorrigible." "I am in love with you," he corrected gently. There is a difference. He helped her down at the house, speaking briefly with Mrs. Henderson about the ankle injury and the need for Penelope to stay off her feet for a few days. The older woman looked suspicious but agreed grudgingly, probably relieved she would not have to pay for any medical care herself. Nathan lingered a moment longer than necessary, his hand warm on Penelope's arm. "I meant everything I said." "I know," she replied, her eyes locked on his. "So did I." The next day, Nathan returned with a bank draft and a lawyer. Henderson blustered and complained, tried to inflate the amount of the debt, but the lawyer had researched the original contract and knew exactly how much remained. By sunset, Penelope Owens was a free woman. She stood in the yard with her few possessions in a cloth sack, hardly able to believe it was real. Mrs. Henderson had been icily polite, clearly disapproving but unable to do anything about the legal transaction. Henderson himself had taken the money and retreated to his study, no doubt pleased to be rid of what he considered a troublesome servant. Nathan waited with his horse, patient and steady. "I have a proposition for you," he said, "and before you think I am being improper, hear me out." Penelope raised an eyebrow, earning a slight smile from him. "My ranch has a small house on the property, separate from the main house. It used to belong to my foreman before he moved into town. It is yours if you want it, rent-free, while you figure out what you want to do next. And if you are willing, I could use someone who can read and write to help with my bookkeeping. I will pay fair wages, and the job is yours regardless of whether you decide to keep seeing me." "You are offering me a job and a house," Penelope said slowly. "Even though I have no experience with bookkeeping. You are brilliant, remember. You will learn quickly, and honestly, my ledgers are a mess. I am much better with horses than numbers." Penelope looked back at the Henderson ranch, at the place that had been her prison for 3 years. Then she looked at Nathan, at the man who had given her books and called her brilliant, who had paid for her freedom without asking for anything in return. "I would like to see this house," she said. His smile could have lit the desert night. "Let us go home then." The ride to Nathan's ranch took them north and slightly west, through terrain that gradually shifted from flat desert to rolling hills dotted with scrub oak and mesquite. Penelope had never been this far from the Henderson place, and she drank in every detail with hungry eyes. The land felt bigger out here, more open, full of possibility. The ranch itself was impressive but not ostentatious. The main house was a solid adobe structure with a wide porch and green shutters, clearly well maintained. Several outbuildings dotted the property. A large barn, a stable, a bunkhouse for the hands. And set apart near a stand of cottonwood trees was a small house, just 2 rooms by the look of it, with a little porch and a stone chimney. "That is yours if you want it," Nathan said, gesturing to the small house. "It is not fancy, but it is clean and sturdy. I had the hands air it out and do some repairs when I started, hoping you might accept my offer. You were that confident I would say yes. I was that hopeful." He dismounted and helped her down, careful of her wrapped ankle. "Come look inside." The house was simple but charming, with whitewashed walls and wood floors that had been recently swept. The main room held a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair near the fireplace, and shelves that were empty but waiting. The bedroom was small, just big enough for a bed and a wardrobe, but it had a window that looked out toward the mountains. "There is a pump right outside the back door," Nathan was saying, "and you are welcome to take meals at the main house if you prefer. My cook, Maria, is excellent and makes enough for an army, or you can cook here if you want privacy, whatever you are comfortable with." Penelope turned to him, overwhelmed by the kindness, by the sheer impossibility of this turn in her fortune. "Nathan, this is too much. I cannot accept all this. You already accepted your freedom, and that is all this is, a place to be free in. He took her hand carefully, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I meant what I said yesterday. I am in love with you, Penelope, but I do not want you to feel obligated to return those feelings because of gratitude. This house, the job, they are yours regardless. I want you to have the space to choose me because you want to, not because you feel you have no other option. I told you yesterday that I feel everything for you, she said softly. That has not changed. Good. His eyes were warm, tender in a way that made her chest ache. Then let me court you properly. We will have dinners together, take walks when your ankle heals, spend time getting to know each other without the secrecy and fear. I want to do this right. I would like that, Penelope said. I would like that very much. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Penelope had imagined. Nathan was attentive but never pushy, romantic but always respectful of her boundaries. He brought her flowers from the meadow behind the barn, left books on her doorstep with notes about why he thought she would enjoy them. They ate dinner together every evening, sometimes at the main house with Maria clucking over Penelope like a mother hen, sometimes at the little house where they cooked together and talked for hours. Nathan taught her about running a ranch, explaining the business with a patience that never wavered even when she asked questions he probably thought were obvious. Penelope discovered she had a knack for numbers and organization, and within a month, she had created a bookkeeping system that made Nathan shake his head in amazement. I should have hired you years ago, he said, reviewing her neat ledgers. This is better than anything I could have managed. That is because you are better with horses than numbers, she teased, earning a laugh that made her heart sing. They went riding when her ankle healed, Nathan teaching her to sit a horse properly, his hand steady as he adjusted her posture and praised her quick learning. They read together in the evenings, sometimes aloud to each other, their voices blending in the lamplight. He told her about his childhood, about the mother who taught herself to read, and the father who loved her for her mind as much as her beauty. Penelope shared her own history, the pain of losing her family's livelihood, the fear and loneliness of her years at the Henderson Ranch. I am sorry you had to go through that, Nathan said, his hand finding hers. But I am grateful it brought you here to me. Is that selfish? No, Penelope said. I feel the same way. The other hands on the ranch accepted her presence with varying degrees of curiosity and approval. Most seemed to respect Nathan's judgment, and when they saw how hard Penelope worked on the bookkeeping, how she never put on airs despite clearly being favored by the boss, they warmed to her. Maria became a fierce ally, teaching Penelope to make tortillas and carne asada, sharing gossip about the other ranches, and defending Penelope against anyone who dared to suggest anything improper about the living arrangements. That girl is a lady, Maria declared to one of the cowboys who made an off-color joke. And Mr. Lawson is a gentleman. You will show respect or find employment elsewhere. Summer turned to autumn, the brutal heat easing into cooler evenings. Penelope had been at the ranch for 5 months, and her feelings for Nathan had only deepened with time. She knew him now in all his complexities, his quiet strength and occasional self-doubt, his love for the land and the animals, his fierce protectiveness of those he cared about. She saw the way he treated his employees with fairness and dignity, how he could gentle the most skittish horse with patience and soft words, and she saw the way he looked at her, as if she was the most precious thing in his world. One evening in October, Nathan asked her to ride out with him to watch the sunset from a ridge overlooking the ranch. They sat on a flat rock, their horses grazing nearby, and watched the sky turn shades of orange and pink and purple over the mountains. I have something to ask you, Nathan said quietly, and I will understand if it is too soon, if you need more time." Penelope's heart began to race. She turned to look at him and found him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. "I love you," he said simply. "I love your strength and your intelligence, your kindness and your courage. I love the way you see the world, the way you throw yourself into learning with such passion. I love your laugh and your stubbornness, and the way you look at me like I am something special even though I am just a rancher who is probably punching above his weight by even asking this question." "Nathan," she breathed, but he pressed a gentle finger to her lips. "Let me finish before I lose my nerve. Penelope Owens, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you are brilliant and cherished and loved beyond measure. I want to fill our home with books and children and laughter. I want to wake up every morning and fall asleep every night knowing that you are mine and I am yours." He pulled a ring from his pocket, simple but beautiful, a gold band with a small turquoise stone. "Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Penelope's cheeks, but she was smiling so wide it almost hurt. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, then cupped her face in his hands and kissed her with a tenderness that made her soul sing. It was her first kiss, and it was everything the books had promised and more. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. "I love you," Penelope whispered. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "I know," Nathan said, his thumb brushing away her tears. "I feel the same way, but we will figure it out together." They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in Tucson. Maria stood up as Penelope's attendant, weeping happy tears and fussing over Penelope's dress, which was a simple blue calico but the finest thing Penelope had ever worn. Nathan wore his best suit, and when Penelope walked down the aisle toward him, the look on his face made her feel like a queen. "You are beautiful," he whispered as she took his hand. "You are everything," she replied. The ceremony was brief, the vows traditional but spoken with profound sincerity. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Nathan kissed her with gentle passion that promised a lifetime of devotion. The small gathering of guests cheered, and Maria threw rice with enthusiastic abandon. They held a simple reception at the ranch, with music and dancing and more food than seemed possible from Maria's kitchen. Penelope danced with Nathan as the sun set, his arms strong around her, and felt happiness so complete she thought she might burst from it. "Thank you," she said against his shoulder. "For what? For seeing me. For giving me books and calling me brilliant when I felt worthless. For loving me." Nathan pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "I did not make you brilliant, Penelope. I just recognized what was already there. You did the hard work, the brave thing. I am just lucky enough to get to witness it." That night, they went to the main house instead of Penelope's little cottage. It was Nathan's home now, and hers as well, though she would always have a soft spot for the place that had been her first taste of freedom. Nathan carried her over the threshold with a laugh, both of them giddy and nervous and deeply in love. He set her down gently in his bedroom, their bedroom now, and took her hands in his. "We can take this as slow as you need," he said. "There is no rush." Penelope smiled, feeling bold and cherished all at once. "I have been reading about this in some of those books you gave me." Nathan laughed, a deep, rich sound that filled the room. "Of course you have. Should I be worried that you know more than I do? I doubt that," she said, blushing but not looking away. "But I am not afraid, not with you." "Never with me," he promised. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have reason to be afraid again." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and showed her with his hands and his heart how cherished she was. The night was tender and passionate, full of whispered words and gentle laughter. two people learning the geography of each other's souls. Penelope fell asleep in Nathan's arms, feeling safer and more loved than she had ever imagined possible. The first year of their marriage was a period of profound adjustment and deepening love. Penelope threw herself into managing the ranch's books and discovered she had a talent for business. She suggested improvements to the cattle operation that increased profits, negotiated better prices with buyers in Tucson, and even started a small venture breeding horses specifically for ranch work. Nathan was delighted by her acumen and made sure everyone knew his wife was as much a partner in the ranch as he was. "You are better at this than I ever was," he said one evening, reviewing their ledgers and shaking his head in admiration. "We are better together," Penelope corrected. "You know the animals and the land. I know the numbers. It works because we work." "Did you just quote that book of philosophy I gave you?" She grinned. "I might have adapted it slightly." Nathan pulled her into his lap, kissing her soundly. "Brilliant woman." Penelope continued to read voraciously, and Nathan continued to feed her appetite for knowledge with books ordered from back east. They built shelves in the main room to hold the growing library, and it became a point of pride for both of them. Visiting ranchers would comment on the unusual collection, and Nathan would smile and say, "My wife is brilliant. She reads everything she can get her hands on." Some people were scandalized by an educated woman, especially one who had been a servant. But Nathan's reputation and success gave them a shield of sorts, and as Penelope proved herself capable and intelligent, many came to respect her, even if they did not understand her. She made friends with the wives of other ranchers, teaching some of them to read in quiet afternoon sessions that reminded her of her own desperate hunger for knowledge. "You are changing things," Nathan observed one day, "making education seem possible for women who thought it was out of reach." "I hope so," Penelope said. "No one should be punished for wanting to learn." In the spring of their second year of marriage, Penelope discovered she was expecting a child. The news filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. Nathan was over the moon, already talking about teaching their son or daughter to ride, to read, to appreciate the beauty of the desert. "What if I do not know how to be a mother?" Penelope asked one night, her hand on her still flat stomach. "Then we will figure it out together," Nathan said, echoing the promise he had made when he proposed. "But I have no doubt you will be extraordinary at it, just like you are extraordinary at everything." The pregnancy progressed well, despite the summer heat and Penelope's insistence on continuing to work on the ranch books, until Nathan finally put his foot down in her 8th month. "You need to rest," he said firmly. "The numbers will still be there after the baby comes." "You are very bossy," Penelope grumbled, but she was smiling as she said it. "Only because I love you both too much to let you overdo it." Their son was born in early autumn, a squalling red-faced boy with a shock of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. They named him Peter, after Penelope's father, and she wept as she held him for the first time, overwhelmed by love and gratitude and the sheer miracle of it all. Nathan was a devoted father from the first moment, cradling his son with gentle confidence and singing soft songs in the middle of the night when Peter fussed. Penelope watched him walk the floor with their baby and fell in love with him all over again, seeing this new tender side of the man she had married. "You are wonderful at this," she said one evening, watching Nathan change Peter's nappy with practiced ease. "I had a good teacher," Nathan replied. "My father did all this with me after my mother died. He said caring for children was not women's work or men's work. It was just love made practical." Penelope thought of the man who had raised Nathan with such wisdom and felt grateful she would get to honor that legacy with their own children. As Peter grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Penelope gradually returned to managing the books, often with Peter playing at her feet or napping in a basket nearby. She taught him his letters as soon as he could talk, read to him every night from the library that had become the heart of their home. Nathan taught him about animals and the land, took him riding in a specially made saddle, showed him the same patience and love he showed everything he cared about. "He will be brilliant like his mother," Nathan said one evening, watching 3-year-old Peter carefully sound out words in a primer. "And kind like his father," Penelope added, seeing the way Peter gently patted a barn cat that had wandered into the house. When Peter was 4, Penelope became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was harder, the desert heat and her age both taking their toll. But Nathan was there every step of the way, handling more of the ranch work himself and hiring additional help to ease her burden. Their daughter was born the following spring, smaller than Peter had been but with the same fierce determination. They named her Rose, and she wrapped them all around her tiny finger from day one. "2 children," Penelope said, holding Rose while Peter carefully examined his new sister. "2 brilliant, beloved children. I never imagined this would be my life." "What did you imagine?" Nathan asked softly. "Nothing, really. When you are punished for wanting to learn, you stop imagining better things. You just try to survive each day." Nathan kissed her forehead gently. "And now I cannot imagine anything better than this. You gave me everything when you gave me those first books. You gave me freedom and love and a future I did not know I could have. You gave me just as much," Nathan said. "You gave me partnership and passion and a reason to be the best version of myself. We saved each other, I think." The years flowed by in a rhythm of seasons and growth. Peter grew tall and thoughtful, with his mother's love of books and his father's easy way with animals. Rose was fierce and clever, asking questions about everything and driving them all to distraction with her curiosity. They ran wild on the ranch under Maria's watchful eye, learning to ride and rope and read with equal enthusiasm. Penelope expanded her teaching, holding regular classes for ranch wives and daughters who wanted to learn to read. She ordered slates and primers with ranch profits, turned one of the outbuildings into a small schoolhouse. Nathan supported every initiative, building desks and shelves, riding into Tucson for supplies, telling anyone who would listen how proud he was of his brilliant wife. "You are changing the territory," the sheriff told them one day, visiting with his own daughter in tow for lessons. "Giving women opportunities they never had before." "Everyone deserves the chance to learn," Penelope said simply, "regardless of their station or circumstances." Sometimes, riding past the Henderson ranch on the way to town, Penelope thought about the girl she had been. Beaten for wanting to read, locked in a cellar, believing she had no value beyond her labor. It seemed like a lifetime ago, though only 10 years had passed since that first day Nathan left a book in the old chicken coop. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked once, following her gaze toward the Henderson property. "If you could go back and change things, avoid that punishment, would you?" Penelope considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally, "because that punishment led to you. Those books led to this life. I would not change a moment of it, even the painful parts, because they brought me here." Nathan reached across their horses to take her hand. "I am glad, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." As their children grew older, Penelope and Nathan made plans to formalize the school, to hire a proper teacher and expand the building. They wanted to create opportunities for all the children in the area, not just those whose families could afford private tutors. It was a bold vision, one that challenged the social norms of the territory, but they had never been ones to back down from a challenge. "We will need support from the other ranchers," Nathan said, reviewing their plans one evening. Not everyone will approve of educating children regardless of their family status. Then we will convince them, Penelope said with the determination that Nathan had fallen in love with years ago. We will show them that educated children become productive adults, that knowledge benefits everyone. She drafted proposals and budgets, made presentations to skeptical ranchers, and slowly won them over with logic and passion. Nathan stood beside her at every meeting, his presence and reputation lending weight to her words. Together, they were formidable. The school opened when Peter was 10 and Rose was 6, a proper building with a bell and windows and rows of desks. They hired a teacher from back east, a young woman named Miss Sarah, who shared Penelope's belief that education was a right, not a privilege. The school accepted children of ranch hands and owners alike, taught them reading and writing and arithmetic without regard for their family status. On opening day, Penelope stood with Nathan and watched children stream into the building, their faces bright with excitement. She thought about the primer hidden under her mattress all those years ago, about the whip that had torn her back for daring to want something better. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked softly. "That sometimes the worst things lead to the best things," Penelope said, "and that I am grateful for every step that brought me here to this." Nathan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You are remarkable, Penelope Lawson. Brilliant and brave and beautiful, just like I said when I first met you. You said I was brilliant for trying to learn," she corrected with a smile. "The beautiful part came later." "I thought it from the first moment," Nathan admitted, "but I did not want to scare you off." Their children thrived in the school alongside children from all over the territory. Peter showed an aptitude for science and mathematics, while Rose was drawn to literature and history. Both were popular with the other students, their easy kindness a reflection of how they had been raised. "They are going to do extraordinary things," Penelope said one evening, watching Peter help a younger student with arithmetic while Rose read aloud to a group of girls. "They learned from the best," Nathan replied. "You showed them that knowledge is power, that kindness matters, that anyone can achieve great things if given the opportunity." As the children approached adolescence, Penelope and Nathan discussed their future. Peter wanted to study engineering at university, dreamed of building bridges and railways that would connect the growing territories. Rose wanted to be a teacher like Miss Sarah, to spread education even further across the West. "We will support whatever they choose," Nathan said. "Even if it means they leave Arizona." "Even if it means they leave," Penelope agreed, though the thought of her children far away made her heart ache. "We will give them the opportunities we had to fight for." But before those decisions needed to be made, there were still years of childhood left to cherish. Family dinners where they discussed books and current events, riding trips into the mountains, quiet evenings in the library that had grown to fill an entire room of the house. Penelope taught Rose to read the difficult texts, to analyze and think critically. Nathan taught Peter about running a ranch, about the business side of agriculture and animal husbandry. "You know, you could run this place yourself," Nathan told Peter one day, "if that is what you want. The ranch will be yours and Rose's someday." Peter looked around at the land he had grown up on, the mountains in the distance, the cattle grazing in the valley. "I love it here," he said, "but I want to see what else is out there too. Is that all right?" "More than all right," Nathan said, clapping his son on the shoulder. "Your mother and I want you to chase your dreams wherever they lead. This ranch will always be here if you decide to come back, but it should not be a cage." "You really mean that?" Peter said, not quite a question. "I watched your mother nearly be destroyed by people who tried to cage her mind and spirit," Nathan said seriously. I will never do that to my children. Freedom to choose your own path is the greatest gift we can give you. When Peter turned 18, he accepted a place at university in California to study engineering. The goodbye was tearful, Penelope clutching her tall son and making him promise to write every week. Nathan pressed money into Peter's hand, far more than necessary, and told him to buy all the books he wanted. "Make us proud," Nathan said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not that you could do anything else." Rose took her brother's departure hard, but it gave her new focus. She threw herself into her studies and helped Miss Sarah with the younger children, discovering a talent for teaching that rivaled her mother's business acumen. By the time she was 16, she was essentially running the school alongside Miss Sarah, developing curriculum and managing the day-to-day operations. "She is extraordinary," Miss Sarah told Penelope. "I have never seen anyone with such natural ability to reach students where they are and bring them forward." "She learned from the best," Penelope said, smiling at the teacher who had become a dear friend over the years. Nathan and Penelope found themselves with an empty nest in some ways, though Rose still lived at home. They used the time to deepen their own relationship, taking rides together like they had in their courtship, reading aloud in the evenings, making love with the easy passion of long familiarity. "I cannot believe it has been nearly 20 years since I left that first book for you," Nathan said one night, holding Penelope close in their bed. "20 years," Penelope echoed. "Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like yesterday." "Do you remember what I wrote in that first note? You said I was brilliant for trying and brave." Penelope smiled against his shoulder. "It was the first time anyone had ever called me either of those things. I meant it then, and I mean it now. You are the most brilliant, brave, beautiful woman I have ever known. Marrying you was the best decision I ever made, even when I argue with you about cattle prices. Especially then," Nathan said, laughing. "I love that you challenge me, that you are a true partner in every sense." "I love you," Penelope said simply. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for giving me books and calling me brilliant and fighting for my freedom. Thank you for loving me." "Always," Nathan promised, "until my last breath and beyond." Rose left for university when she turned 18, following her brother to California, though, to a different school that specialized in education. Her goodbye was just as emotional, though she promised to return to Arizona after graduation to teach. "The territory needs good teachers," she said firmly, "and I want to build on what you and Father started here." "You will do amazing things," Penelope said, holding her daughter tight. "I am so proud of you." With both children gone, the ranch felt quiet in a way it never had before. Nathan and Penelope adjusted to being just the two of them again, finding renewed joy in each other's company. They took a trip to San Francisco to visit Peter, marveled at the growing city and the bridges he was helping design. They attended Rose's graduation and watched with pride as she gave a speech about the importance of education for all. Both children eventually returned to Arizona, drawn back by love of the land and family. Peter brought a wife, a clever engineer named Margaret who fit seamlessly into the family. Rose married a fellow teacher, a kind man named Thomas who shared her passion for education. Grandchildren arrived in due time, filling the ranch with laughter and chaos once more. Penelope taught her grandchildren to read just as she had taught their parents, passing on the love of learning that had saved her life so many years ago. Nathan taught them about horses and cattle, showed them the land with the same patient love he had shown their parents. "We are blessed," Penelope said one evening, watching their family gathered for dinner. Peter and Margaret, Rose and Thomas, 4 grandchildren ranging in age from infant to 10 years old. The table was loud with conversation and laughter, just as she had once dreamed. "We are," Nathan agreed. "And we earned it. We built this together." As they grew older, Nathan and Penelope gradually turned over more responsibility to Peter and Rose. The ranch continued to prosper under the younger generation's management, incorporating new techniques and ideas while honoring the foundation Nathan and Penelope had built. The school expanded further, becoming a model for education in the territory. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Penelope with a gift. It was a leather-bound journal, blank pages waiting to be filled. "I thought you might want to write your story," he said. "Everything that happened, from the punishment to the books to building this life. It is an extraordinary story and it should be preserved." Penelope ran her fingers over the smooth leather, thinking of all the books she had read over the years, all the stories that had shaped her. "I would not know where to begin." "Begin with the truth," Nathan said. "That she was punished for learning to read, and a cowboy gave her books and called her brilliant. The rest will follow." So Penelope began to write. She wrote about the whip and the cellar, about fear and hunger for knowledge. She wrote about the first book hidden in the chicken coop, about notes that said she was brilliant and brave. She wrote about falling in love with a man who saw her as an equal, about the marriage and children, and building a life beyond anything she had imagined. It took her 2 years to finish the manuscript, writing in the early mornings when the house was quiet and her mind was clear. When she finally wrote the last word and closed the journal, she felt a sense of completion, as if her story had finally found its proper ending. "Let me read it," Nathan requested, so she handed over the journal and waited nervously while he read. She watched emotions play across his face, saw him smile and frown and occasionally wipe away tears. When he finished, he looked at her with eyes full of love. "This is beautiful," he said. "This is important. People need to hear this story to understand what courage and love can accomplish." "It is just our life," Penelope said. "There is no such thing as just a life," Nathan replied. "Every story matters, especially ones that show how people can overcome impossible odds. Promise me you will try to get this published." So Penelope sent the manuscript to publishers back east, expecting rejections. Instead, she received an offer from a small press in Boston. They wanted to print her story, believed it would resonate with readers who were fighting for education reform and women's rights. The book was published when Penelope was 55 years old, a modest volume with a simple cover. She did not expect much from it, was content just to have her story preserved. But to her surprise, the book found an audience. Women wrote to her from across the country, sharing their own stories of fighting for education, thanking her for putting into words what they had felt but could not express. "You are famous," Nathan teased, watching her read through stacks of letters. "I am a woman who wrote down what happened," Penelope corrected. "That is all." But it was more than that, and she knew it. Her story gave hope to people who felt trapped by circumstances, showed that change was possible even when it seemed impossible. Schools began using the book as part of their curriculum, teaching children about courage and the importance of education. Nathan and Penelope grew old together on the ranch they loved, surrounded by family and the library they had built over a lifetime. They watched their grandchildren learn to read, saw great-grandchildren arrive with the same hunger for knowledge they had passed down through the generations. On a warm spring evening, when Penelope was 70 years old, she sat on the porch with Nathan, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. His hair was silver now, his face lined with age, but his eyes were the same warm brown that had looked at her with kindness so many decades ago. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me?" Penelope asked. I said I did not mean to startle you, Nathan replied, when I came to talk to you in the Henderson kitchen. And I was terrified, Penelope said. I thought you were there to hurt me or get me in trouble. I could not imagine that someone like you would want to help someone like me. I am glad you let me prove you wrong. So am I. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. Thank you for giving me books and calling me brilliant. Thank you for loving me when I did not know I was worth loving. You were always worth loving, Nathan said firmly. I just made sure you knew it. And thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who fell in love with your courage before he ever really knew you. You made my life extraordinary. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank below the horizon. Two people who had built something beautiful from the wreckage of injustice and the power of knowledge. Around them, the ranch hummed with life. Cattle lowing in the distance, horses nickering in the barn, grandchildren's laughter drifting from the house. Inside, the library held thousands of books now, volumes on every subject imaginable. But if you looked carefully, you would find a special shelf near the window. On it sat a worn primer, its pages yellowed with age, and a collection of short stories in a leather binding that had been repaired many times. Next to them was a note, carefully preserved behind glass, written in neat handwriting. You are doing wonderfully. This will help you learn faster. I am proud of you. N.L. These were the books that had started everything, the physical proof that one act of kindness could change the course of a life. They were kept there not as museum pieces, but as reminders, as evidence that love and learning could transform the world one person at a time. Nathan and Penelope Lawson lived into their 80s, a remarkable feat for their time and place. They remained active and engaged, attending school events and family gatherings, offering wisdom gained from a lifetime of partnership. When Nathan finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 84, Penelope mourned deeply, but without regret. They had been given more than 50 years together, years filled with love and purpose and joy. She lived another 3 years without him, spending her time with family and writing letters to the many people who still reached out about her book. On the day she died, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, Penelope's last words were about the books that had changed her life. Never stop learning, she told them, her voice weak but clear. Never let anyone tell you that knowledge is not for you. And if you are ever lucky enough to meet someone who calls you brilliant, who sees your worth when others do not, hold on to them with everything you have. That is love, and it is the greatest gift in the world. She closed her eyes then and slipped away peacefully. A woman who had lived fully and loved deeply and changed countless lives through her courage and determination. At her funeral, attended by what seemed like half the territory, Rose read from her mother's book. The passage she chose was about the first book Nathan had left in the chicken coop, about the terror and hope of reaching for knowledge despite the consequences. There was not a dry eye in the church. Peter spoke about his mother's legacy, about the school that still operated and had expanded to 3 buildings, about the hundreds of students who had learned to read, because Penelope Lawson believed everyone deserved that chance. He talked about the grandmother who had taught him that brilliance came in many forms, that courage was not the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. They buried Penelope next to Nathan in a plot overlooking the ranch, with headstones that bore simple inscriptions. His read, Nathan Lawson, beloved husband and father who saw brilliance in others. Hers read, Penelope Lawson, beloved wife and mother who proved courage changes everything. But their true legacy lived on in the people they had touched, the lives they had changed, the generations who grew up believing that education was a right and love could overcome any obstacle. The school continued to thrive, eventually becoming a full academy that attracted students from across the West. The ranch remained in the family, passed down to great-grandchildren who still found comfort in the library their great-grandparents had built. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the desert wind whispered through the cottonwoods, you could almost hear the echo of two voices reading aloud together, a cowboy and the woman he called brilliant, sharing words and love and a life that had overcome impossible odds to become something beautiful and true and lasting.